The human body can be described as a well-oiled machine. There's tons of working parts that go hand in hand to ensure our body can function. The heart pumps blood, the blood carries oxygen, the oxygen is quite literally what gives us life. But the idea of physical gears being a part of your body seems, well, inhumane. If anything, it's mechanical, which would make you the furthest thing from human. And I'm not talking about an Iron Man, Tony Stark type gear, I'm talking metal tubes and cranks, like the real deal. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to SCP-217. If a virus like this were to slowly take over the world, well, one thing is for sure, it'd be working around the clock. Alright, enough of that. Today on Life's Biggest Questions, we're asking, what if SCP-217 was real? The Clockwork Virus. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to LBQ. I'm your host, Jared Bronstein, and let us know in the comments down below if you'd like us to start covering more of the SCPs again. For me personally, it's a fan favorite, and I love seeing how creative some people can get. Before we get into it, click the playlist that popped up in the corner of the screen for some similar videos, and stick around to the very end of this one for some common replies from another video. Also, we got a brand new channel called Top 10 Central Vibe. Be sure to check it out. We made a little trailer just for you guys, so enjoy this.
Just like blup blup blup. Oh, and that was for sure poo. This is gonna be Top 10 Central Vibe. Hope you guys like it. It's gonna be starring me all the time. We're in the Illuminati.
For now, let's get into exploring what if SCP-217 was real. So it seems SCP-217 is actually a virus. It's incurable and has a 100% rate of infecting those exposed to it. The virus itself can be transmitted through physical touch or contact with bodily fluids, and symptoms may not show up for years. The virus itself turns organic tissue into an organic metal. It's not fully understood how this process takes place, but it's clear what happens to the infected subject. Specifically in humans, those infected may not even be aware in the early stages. Symptoms such as feelings of confusion, insomnia, and joint stiffness are all related to this infection in its early stages, but as the virus strengthens, those infected have reported being in a tremendous amount of pain. According to the SCP Foundation, hearts are replaced by gears and small tubes, joints are replaced by gear networks, and eyes are replaced by what appears to be hand crank film cameras. Signs of infection appear on the outside of all bodies except for mammals, who go through an internal transformation before showing signs on the surface. According to the SCP Foundation, the virus has infected major metropolitan areas, although where exactly has been deemed classified. Those who are in the middle or advanced stages of infection tend to show a major decline in mental state as well, responding in a repetitive fashion, dull and mechanical in action. As per the Foundation, it seems as if they're becoming robotic, which is literally what's happening. Information on a fully converted brain has been expunged by the Foundation, so it's unclear what will happen, but if the pattern of organs turned into machinery rings true, well, I think we could figure out the rest. Those infected in the early stages have reported feeling a fluttering or moving under the skin, as well as hearing a ticking noise similar to that of a clock. This sound appears to be the most prominent when the infection is spreading through the subject's neck, shoulders, and head. As the infection progresses, subjects tend to feel a sharp tearing pain in areas that are described as being converted. Similar to that of being cut with a knife or tearing a muscle, this pain can persist for hours or days, varying from subject to subject. The infected areas can be made up of metal, usually brass, steel, and iron. However, in some cases, the infection appears to replace tissue with leather, rubber, glass, wood, and other basic materials, as per the Foundation. Another interesting aspect is that the organs and tissues directly affected by this infection appear to become more resilient and carry the same strength and density as the materials they appear to resemble. Any damaged areas also repair, however the time in which it takes them to repair is much slower compared to a normal human. As per the Foundation, any damaged areas can be instantly repaired by replacing the damaged parts with new parts made up of the same materials. The scariest part of this SCP, as previously mentioned, is that people could be infected for months or years without anyone knowing. The Foundation also believes the infection spreads the quickest in large offices, malls, or other areas with large concentrations of people. Now, this virus does sound somewhat like a current pandemic, although as far as I'm concerned, the virus we're dealing with doesn't turn your insides into metal. Still, that being said, what we're dealing with is highly contagious, can spread through close contact and bodily fluids, and may not show symptoms in those affected. I'm not saying that our current pandemic is necessarily an SCP. In fact, I'm not saying that at all. But something here is a little suspicious and I'm not sure how I feel about it. Either way, let's continue on. So now that you understand what this virus is capable of doing, what happens if it's real? Unfortunately, it seems the only outcome here is that eventually the human race is infected and we all turn into robots. Given the fact that this disease is incurable and has a 100% rate of infecting those exposed to it, there's no reason to think we aren't inevitably doomed. Here's a prime example. You're walking through the mall, and the person in front of you coughs or sneezes. You don't think much of it, maybe make a comment about how they should cover their mouth, and that's it. Boom. You and every other person within a certain vicinity of that cough is now infected by this virus. Unlike many other viruses, this one can survive years without finding a host body, meaning it can be airborne for years without anyone knowing and randomly infect a person or a group of people who then would inevitably spread the virus even more. As we know, the virus responsible for COVID can survive without a host for a prolonged period of time, but not years. The virus also doesn't have a 100% rate of infecting those exposed to it, so it hasn't and wouldn't spread the same way. Still, even with the precautions we've been taking worldwide, with people social distancing, wearing masks, and washing their hands regularly, we've been dealing with this virus for more than half the year. Safe to say if SCP-217 was real, everyone would eventually be affected by it. Although it wouldn't necessarily kill those that are infected, we'd eventually become a race of mechanical people. It's unclear how the virus replaces the tissue and at what point the virus stops replacing your tissue with mechanics and gears. I previously mentioned data about the fully infected brain being expunged, and it seems this SCP is letting us decide whether or not the virus affects the brain or not. Ultimately, this would determine whether or not the virus completely turns humans into machines or not. The fact that those who are infected tend to become lethargic and get frustrated when facing new problems, as well as tend to act in a robotic fashion, well, it leads me to believe this virus transforms the average human into a fully mechanical being. In a sense, if this virus were real, it turned the human race into a race of robots. Which begs the question, would the human race eventually die off? How would we reproduce? Assuming the virus also replaces some, if not all, of our reproductive organs. If the virus were to in fact completely transform humans into robotic beings, and I mean completely, then yes, eventually the human race would die off because, well, we just wouldn't be able to reproduce. But that doesn't necessarily mean we, as people, would die. The only real way to kill someone infected by the virus, I assume, would be to stop repairing any issues and to discontinue any maintenance. I mean, just throw it in a body of water. But as per the Foundation's page, I quote, "Testing has shown that there are no ill effects if parts made from normal materials, steel, wood, leather, replace the existing biomechanical clockworks. This means if someone were to need a repair and got whatever their issue was fixed, technically, they would be able to continue functioning. So although the human race would eventually go extinct, those who were once human but infected with the Clockwork Virus would likely be eternal or would eventually just stop working due to old parts." And now we could talk about the real fun. Looking at how certain parts of the world have handled our current pandemic, with many people refusing to wear a mask, claiming it's their right not to, well, I gotta say, if SCP-217 was real, it wouldn't be long before the majority of the world would be infected. Now hopefully, upon finding the first infection, we realize how serious things were. But as we could see given our real life example here, things didn't seem to be all that serious until it was far too late. Once infections started spreading like wildfire, then we realized we had a problem on our hands. And even now, with all that we know, some people aren't taking things all that seriously. Whether they don't want to wear a mask, are willing to risk their safety and potentially others to go hang out with friends, or think that the whole thing isn't real in the first place, it makes it much harder to slow and stop the spread. So if we had another virus taking over, well, my money is that people would likely start to act the exact same way they are now, until it started to affect them personally. It's easy to assume if people saw firsthand that the virus turns you into a machine, or I guess a clock.
Pleased to meet you. I am TikTok.
They'd be scared. But it's also easy to assume many people wouldn't believe it's real in the first place. Not to bring it back to our current situation, but I mean, some people don't think it's real. Now look, I'm not here to get political, as personally, I really don't care in your beliefs so long as they don't harm me. Unfortunately, people doing things that will likely increase the spread of the virus does affect me, so I am standing here asking that you please wear a mask. If you don't, that's fine, but do it on an island somewhere so I don't have to get infected. And to wrap this one up, guys, if SCP-217 was real, well, I think it's quite obvious that life as we know it, yeah, it would change forever. You'd have the infected people who would just start to spread it to even more people, the people who didn't realize they were carriers, and those who don't think any of this is real in the first place. There wouldn't be any people who know it's real and are taking precautions not to get infected, because this thing would be around just way too long without people even knowing it existed in the first place. And by the time we realize what we're dealing with, and the thought of a potential vaccine even became a sliver of an idea, it would most definitely already be way too late. All in all, our fate would be sealed, and unless someone found a way to reverse the effects, we'd simply be a world of robot clock people within a few years' time. No pun intended there. Wouldn't be very fun. And there you guys have it for what if SCP-217 is real, the Clockwork Virus. For now, let's reply to some comments from the video. Did Donald Trump really only pay $750 in taxes? Von Chamarch said, it's almost like the New York Times has a dishonest agenda. You know what, there's something about media with politics that it seems like certain, media stations, I guess you could say, or like publications, outlets, whatever you want to say, they're definitely pro one side or the other. I can see why you would think the New York Times is a little anti-Trump. With that being said, I think they also covered the story on Biden's son, Hunter. Was it Hunter? With the Russia thing? I can't say for sure because I haven't you know, I can pull out my phone now and check, but I'm pretty sure the New York Times also did an investigation regarding, I think it was Hunter Biden with the whole Ukraine situation. So I mean, they're, you know, they try to keep it even keel, but again, given our current climate, I think being anti-Trump for the most part gets you more fans, publicly at least, I'm gonna say. And I'm not even saying about my beliefs, I'm just saying I think it's been evident that, you know, on social media and the internet in general, the anti-Trump people I think are louder. So to me it seems at least. Megathello said just a lot of tax loopholes which both parties made happen. And that's kind of what I was saying, is like, regardless of your political beliefs, from a business standpoint, if this man was able to pay $750 in taxes, is it bullshit? Yeah, it's ridiculous, yes. Because I've paid close to that in taxes, and I don't even make $100,000, so like, this guy's making hundreds of millions, he should pay more, I get it. At the same time though, if he was able to find a way to just be like, I didn't make that much money, and the government was like, all right, according to the law, you owe us $750, then he's got a great accountant. Say what you want about him, his accountant is like next level. That's insane. Terminator 156 said, whether Trump wins the election or not, doesn't matter, it's still gonna be bad. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys know this on LBQ, but I'm actually half American. My dad's from Philadelphia. I spent some summers there growing up. And honestly, as much as I've joked about the election and everything going on, after watching that debate last night, it genuinely does hurt me to see that's what the country has come to. And I fear for the country's future. I don't know what's gonna happen in the next 4 years, regardless of who wins, regardless of who you support. I'm not trying to get political here, but that debate was just a nightmare. So I don't really know what to think, but hopefully you guys are good. Anyways, I'll be chilling here in Canada. I've been your host, Jared Bronstein, and we'll see you guys in the next one.